Ah, there you are. Pull up a chair by the fireside. I'm going to tell you a story, but it's not for the faint of heart. My name is Julia Norton, and you're listening to Dark and Twisty Tales, a weekly telling of the lesser-known and more grisly folk stories and fairy tales. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. The Frog King, or Iron Heinrich. In the olden days, when wishing still worked, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful. But the youngest daughter was so lovely that even the sun, who has seen many things, was struck with wonder every time he shone on her face. Not far away from the king's palace there was a deep, dark forest, and under a lime tree in the forest there was a well. In the heat of the day the princess used to go into the forest and sit by the edge of the well, from which a marvellous coolness seemed to flow. To pass the time she had a golden ball, which she used to throw up in the air and catch. It was her favourite game. Now, one day it happened that she threw it a little carelessly, and she couldn't catch it. Instead, the ball rolled away from her and towards the well, and then it ran right over the edge and disappeared. The princess ran after it and looked down into the water, but it was so deep that she couldn't see the ball. She couldn't even see the bottom of the well. She began to cry, and she cried louder and louder, inconsolably. But as she wept and sobbed, someone spoke to her.
"What's the matter, princess? You're crying so bitterly you'd move a stone to pity."
She looked around to see where the voice was coming from, and saw a frog who'd stuck his big ugly head out of the water. "Oh, it's you, you old splasher," she said. "I'm crying because my golden ball's fallen into the water, and it's so deep I can't see it."
"Well, you can stop crying now," said the frog. "I can help you. But what will you give me if I fetch your ball for you?"
"Whatever you want, frog, anything. My clothes, my pearls, my jewels, even the golden crown I'm wearing."
"I don't want your clothes and your jewels and your golden crown, and no good to me. But if you love me and take me as your companion and playmate, if you let me sit next to you at the table and eat from your dish and drink from your cup and sleep in your bed, then I'll dive down and bring up your golden ball."
The princess thought, "What is this stupid frog saying? Whatever he thinks, he'll have to stay in the water where he belongs. Perhaps he can get my ball." But of course she didn't say that. Instead she said, Yes, I promise you all of that if you just bring my ball." As soon as the frog heard her say yes, he put his head under the water and dived to the bottom. A moment later he came swimming back up with the ball in his mouth, and he threw it on the grass. The princess was so happy to see it that she snatched it up and ran off at once.
Wait, called the frog. "Take me with you. I can't hop as fast as you can run."
But she took no notice. She hurried home and forgot all about the poor frog, who had to go back down into his well. Next day the princess was sitting at table with her father the king and all the people of the court, and eating off her golden plate, when something came hopping up the marble steps. Blip, blop, blip, blop. When it reached the top, it knocked at the door and called,
"Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me."
She ran to see who it was and opened the door, and there was the frog. Frightened, she slammed the door shut at once and ran back to the table. The king saw that her heart was pounding and said, "What are you afraid of, my child? Is there a giant at the door?" No," she said. "It's not a giant. It's a horrible frog." "What does the frog want with you?" "Oh, Papa, yesterday when I was playing in the forest near the well, my golden ball fell in the water, and I started to cry, and because I was crying so much, the frog got it for me, and because he insisted, I had to promise that he could be my companion. But I didn't think he'd ever leave the water, not really. But there he is outside the door and he wants to come in. And then there came a second knock at the door. And a voice called,
Princess, princess, youngest daughter, open up and let me in, or else your promise by the water isn't worth a rusty pin. Keep your promise, royal daughter, open up and let me in.
The king said, "If you make a promise, you have to keep it. Go and let him in." She opened the door and the frog hopped in. He hopped all the way to her chair.
"Lift me up," he said. "I want to sit next to you."
She didn't want to, but the king said, "Go on, do as he says." So she lifted the frog up. Once he was on the chair, he wanted to be on the table, so she had to lift him up there as well. And then he said,
"Push your golden plate a bit closer so I can eat with you."
She did, but everyone could see that she wasn't enjoying it. The frog was, though. He ate her food with great pleasure, while every mouthful seemed to stick in the princess's throat. Finally, the frog said,
"Well, I've had enough now, thank you, and I'd like to go to bed. Carry me up to your room and get your silken bed ready so we can sleep in it."
The princess began to cry because the frog's cold skin frightened her. She trembled at the thought of him in her sweet, clean bed. But the king frowned and said, "You shouldn't despise someone who helped you when you were in trouble." She picked up the frog between her finger and thumb and set him down outside her bedroom door and shut it firmly. But he kept knocking and called,
"Let me in! Let me in!"
So she opened the door and said, "All right, you can come in, but you must sleep on the floor." She made him lie down at the foot of her bed, but still he said,
Let me up, I'm just as tired as you."
"Oh, for goodness sake," she said, and picked him up and put him at the far end of her pillow.
"Closer," he said. "Closer."
But that was too much. In a flash of anger, she scooped up the frog and threw him against the wall. But when he fell back into the bed, what a surprise! He wasn't a frog any more. In fact, he'd become a young man, a prince, with beautiful, smiling eyes, and she loved him and accepted him as her companion, just as the king would have wished. The prince told her that an evil witch had put a spell on him, and that only she, the princess, could have rescued him from the well. What's more, on the following day a carriage would come to take them to the prince's kingdom. Then they fell asleep side by side. And next morning, no sooner had the sun woken them than a carriage drew up outside the palace, just as the prince had said. It was pulled by 8 horses, with ostrich plumes nodding on their heads and golden chains shining among their harnesses. At the back of the coach was faithful Heinrich. He was the prince's servant, and when he'd learned that his master had been changed into a frog, he was so dismayed that he went straight to the blacksmith and ordered 3 iron bands to be put around his heart to stop it from bursting with grief. Faithful Heinrich helped them into the carriage and took his place at the back. He was overjoyed to see the prince again. When they'd gone a little way, the prince heard a loud crack from behind. He turned around and called out, "Heinrich, the coach is breaking."
No, my lord, it's just my heart. When you were living in the well, when you were a frog, I suffered such great pain that I bound my heart with iron bands to stop it from breaking, for iron is stronger than grief. But love is stronger than iron, and now you're human again, the iron bands are falling off. And twice more they heard the same cracking noise, and each time they thought it was the carriage, but each time they were wrong. It was an iron band breaking away from faithful Heinrich's heart, because his master was safe again.
Thank you for listening to Dark and Twisty Tales. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes, rate, review, and share with all your friends. You can also get more information about me, Julia Norton, at julianorton.com. So, until the next time, bye.